Welcome back to another episode of Seven Pals Go to the Movies. This is another Throwback Thursday review, and today I'll be reviewing the movie Blow. And just a fair warning, there's going to be spoilers up ahead, so you've been warned. The story of how George Jung, aka Boston George, along with the Medellin cartel headed by Pablo Escobar, established the American cocaine market in the 1970s in the United States. So let's begin with my first pro. The idea that this movie deals with drug trafficking by telling the story of Boston George, or El Americano as the Colombians called him, but it begins with George saying that he did it because he never wanted to be poor, but later he says that it turned into a thrill of the game versus the money. Similar how Mr. White from Breaking Bad began his plan to get money to leave for his family after he died, but later he does it because he wants to have the power that it gives him. I can go on about how George's life had many lucky breaks, like when he went to jail, and that is how he made his connection, or other interesting side stories that are from interviews, but I do believe that this film is 80% accurate to his life story. We do have to give some leeway because we will really never know how some of the meetings that are shown in private went. Overall, we do know about George's criminal record and how he ended up in jail and losing $100 million that he made by trafficking drugs. Next pro, the cast in the film, it's quite something. You have Johnny Depp as George Jung, Penelope Cruz, Paul Reubens, Pee Wee Herman, Cliff Curtis, who can play anything, famous Ray Liotta, and Franca Potente, who you might know as Lola from Run Lola Run. These are just a few of the talented actors in this film. They all leave a good impression of their skill in the characters they play, so I gotta give a strong point here because it is hard just to say that the film stands out due to Johnny Depp or Penelope Cruz or any one person in particular. They all add something to this film that makes it stand out. Next pro, the movie does a nice job of showing the timeline period through clothing, cars, or the set designs of the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Visually, you can see a scene and pretty fast say what decade it's from. It's not about the music, but the scenes and the vibe that they actually portray on the screen and how they shot the scenes. Next pro, the lines that Johnny Depp delivers that hint at other films. For example, when at the airport, they tell him to open the luggage and they pull out women's panties and he says, "Hard to break old habits." That is a reference to his character in the movie Ed Wood, who wears women's underwear. Or his line when he says, "We're gonna need a bigger boat," as a reference to Jaws. Or the scene where Ray Liotta asks Johnny Depp how he can pay for his girlfriend's wedding ring and he says, "Construction." It's a callback to Ray Liotta's character in Goodfellas when they ask him how he can pay with $20 bills and he says construction. And there are many more callback lines, so I gotta give it up for the director or actors or writers for adding those lines in. And speaking about the director, it's ironic that he made this film about cocaine trafficking and the use of it, and after its release he died and in his system there was traces of cocaine. And now onto my cons. I gotta say, after seeing some interviews and finding out that some scenes were not as accurate as they showed, made me question if it was done to keep the pace or make George seem like he was dealt a bad hand, like the ending when he imagines his daughter visiting him in jail. I mean, the film made it seem as if he wanted out and his last job was meant to make enough money for him and his daughter, but there are interviews of the real George saying that he would go back to do jobs just for the thrill. I mean, there is a slight chance that both can be true, but the end does make it seem like he was a defeated man whose daughter doesn't visit him. Also, some information that I believe to be important were left out in some scenes, like when he got busted during his birthday party. In reality, there was only a few grams of cocaine that the police found, and I do believe that it was not his birthday, but it was due to the guests coming to see him with fancy cars that would park outside his place. That led to the bust. And also the fact that the cops were already watching him and just needed any excuse to bust him. Or the other fact, when he moved to California with his friend Tuna, it was for college and not just because they wanted to move out west. Next con, I feel that they made it seem that George met Pablo early on versus that he dealt with Pablo's cousin, Gustavo, and worked with others for years before actually meeting Pablo. It just feels like they did that to name drop and have somebody on screen that people would actually know who was powerful, but the fact is that he did meet him and he did see him kill snitches. So that part is true. Next con, instead of showing George's real picture at the end, why not have Johnny give the last line and slowly transition to the real George saying, "There are no more white horses or pretty ladies at the door," and fade to the picture. I feel this is better than just showing the picture on screen, linger for a few seconds, and then rolling credits. So my grade for this movie is going to be a 7.5 out of 10. The story of Boston George, how he went from being a small town boy to making $100 million from smuggling cocaine into the US, or the true story of how power and the thrill of smuggling drugs is stronger than any drug. And also that this is based on real events makes it a good movie to watch. The star power is strong here, and we see some actors that we recently have lost, like Ray Liotta in 2022, Paul Reubens in 2023, and also the real George having passed away in 2020. 2021 after being released from jail in 2014 and reconnecting with his daughter. So I don't think any person who watches this film is going to get bored. They might find some cons that I listed, but you can skip over them and just watch the film. And if you want, you can read the book after or search for interviews with the real George on YouTube. Highly enjoyable, highly recommended. Go watch this movie. So that does it for this review of Blow. Please join us next time where we're going to review Goodfellas.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Please like, comment, and subscribe. You can find our social media links below. And like always, keep watching movies.